Ronald Tolkien began his military service in Calais, France. His battalion was sent to the River Somme in the middle of the summer of 1916. Tolkien saw action and fought in the famous Battle of the Somme. Throughout his military campaign, he found time to work on languages and mythology, and also portions of the Silmarillion. Tolkien recalls the frightening mechanization of war, the inhumanity of mankind, and the pessimism in the world. He also lost two good friends of his that made up half of the Tea Club, G.B. Smith and Robert Gilson. The Lord of the Rings has been likened to World War I and II. Tolkien, though, claims that the trilogy is not an allegory for the wars.
An author cannot, of course, remain wholly unaffected by his experience.
The effect of his wartime experience can be seen in the introduction to The Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers.
It seems now often forgotten that to be caught by youth in 1914 was no less hideous an experience than to be involved in 1939 and the following years. By 1918, all but one of my close friends were dead.
On October 27th, he developed trench fever, and by November 8th was shipped back to England. For the next 2 years, Ronald was stationed at Hull in England, and his sickness cycled between remissions. Amidst Ronald being ill, Edith delivers their first child on November 16, 1917, John Francis Reuel Tolkien. In 1920, Ronald landed a job as an associate professor at the University of Leeds. He moved up north to Leeds while Edith and John remained in Oxford. Soon after the 1920 school year started, Edith had another child and named him Michael Hilary Reuel Tolkien. In 1922, Ronald's first book was published, A Middle English Vocabulary. At Leeds, Tolkien worked with E.B. Gordon and collaborated to compile a new edition of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. This project was the first of many scholarly works done by Tolkien in the area of philology. The two also formed the Viking Club. Members of the Viking Club drank, read Germanic epics, and sang songs in Old Norse. The Viking Club filled the empty space of the now diminished Tea Club. In 1924, Edith found out that she was pregnant once more and hoped for a girl. When the child was born in November, it proved to be a boy, Christopher Reuel Tolkien, Ronald's third son. Early in 1925 came word that the professorship of Anglo-Saxon at Oxford was shortly to fall vacant. Tolkien got the job. Back in Oxford, he acquired someone that would prove to be a very valuable ally and friend, Clive Staples Lewis. Lewis served as a critic, a literary responder, and a friend. With Lewis, Tolkien formed two more organizations at Oxford. One was called the Coal-Biters. This group read poetry and epics from Iceland. The second was the Inklings. Essentially, it was a literary society where members could come and read manuscripts and receive friendly criticism. Tolkien read unfinished versions of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings to the Inklings. These two organizations provided Tolkien with the male comradeship that he has been longing for, and they kept the spirit of the Tea Club alive.
I remember very clearly. I can still see the corner in my house in 20 Northmore Road where it happened. I got an enormous pile of exam papers there, and marking school examinations in the summertime is an enormous, very laborious, and unfortunately also boring. And I remember picking up a paper and actually I nearly gave an extra mark for it, extra 5 marks actually. There was one page on this particular paper was left blank. Glorious. Nothing to read, so I scribbled on it. I can't think why. In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit.
This one famous sentence from 1928 began a legacy and a following that would change the face of literature forever. Tolkien worked on The Hobbit intermittently from this point up until its publication in 1937. One of Ronald's former students helped the story get to the publishing house, Allen and Unwin. After the September publication, the book was immediately popular, and the first printing sold out by Christmas. Tolkien was no ordinary storyteller. The years of experience in the war, the Tea Club, Sarehole, Africa, and everything in between consistently added to his mental universe of Middle-earth. As his writing progressed, he was to discover, not invent, the history of his world.
Everybody, including divine spirits, and the God makes mistakes in this mythology, and because the gods made a primary error. Instead of leaving the elves and men to find out their way under the guidance of God, they invited the elves because the rebel amongst them, the wicked god Melkor, was alive, was a devastated last part of the world. They took them back into their paradise to the west to protect them.
He expanded on its existence in a sequel project that Allen and Unwin asked for. Tolkien wished to publish the Silmarillion, but there were no hobbits in it. It was a historical background for all of Middle-earth, before hobbits came to be. As a result, work began on the Lord of the Rings trilogy. By 1955, all 3 volumes were completed and published: The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King. In 1969, Ronald and Edith retired to Bournemouth. Edith soon became ill. On November 22, 1971, Edith Tolkien passed away. Ronald simply continued his work on the Silmarillion for the rest of his life. On September 2, 1973, John Ronald Reuel Tolkien died at 81 years of age. Tolkien is a literary icon and shall never be forgotten. He led an inspiring and successful life and gave the world some of the best literature of all time.